Ladies and gentlemen, SideStrafe back, and today I've got something a little bit different for you. This is the Art of Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, and once I beat the game, I had to go out and pick up the art book. I love concept art for movies and video games. I've got a lot of books in my collection, and since this is one of my favorite games of all time, if not my absolute favorite game of all time, I just had to have this one. And so I'm going to go through this book in its entirety. If you're looking at picking this one up, or you're just curious about the art, then stick around. You might enjoy this. But if you haven't played the game yet and you're planning on playing it, or if you're planning on watching my playthrough of it, spoiler warning, this book will contain places and characters that you might see at later points in the game. So be warned there. Maybe come back and watch this at a later date. But anyways, please forgive me going into this because I'm not used to filming books. I haven't really done a lot of this in my time on YouTube. But I'm going to do my best to center things once we get to the actual art pages. But this is the beginning here. There is some intro pieces as well, things that they talk about, the game development, the fact that this is the last Uncharted game by Naughty Dog. Bittersweet as it may be, I believe it is for the best. It's a fantastic game. So let's get to it here. Okay. This is, I believe, organized for the most part by chapter, but I think the beginning section is more so focusing on like the earlier portions of the game, and then one chapter that comes much later, but still goes back to the, I think, the 80s time frame with young Nate and Sam here. So you can see some conceptualization of the brothers in their youth and different art styles, which is really interesting here. You've got something that's almost Pixar-like, and then some rough paintings as well, and then some more detailed work on the left. And then some black and white pieces. I think we'll see some storyboard elements as well if these aren't already parts of that. Which is another thing I really like to see about games and movies is the storyboarding, because that's really helpful for artists going into things, creating compositions and whatnot for scenes that they're setting up. Again, some more sketches on the left. Different hair perhaps, facial features. Render here of young Nate getting scolded. This one's interesting. It actually seems to have Nate and Sam in trouble. This is she's called the Adventurer. I forget her actual name that she was given if we were going through those documents that we found later on in the chapter, but you can see different clothing elements there. Things that she might have been wearing in the house. Brief screen time, but you can see the attention to detail that goes into creating these characters. More on her here. It's nice painting. And, you know, these things take a while to make. But I think that's what makes a great game developer, is one that knows to spend time on conceptualization to help with creating the rest of the game. Here we have different clothing for Nate, perhaps different types of pajamas. More of that, what I like to call Pixar-esque art style here, which is interesting to see. And then here, Sam and Nate, again, different clothing. This perhaps helps the 3D modelers and texture artists with scale and whatnot. And then representing the styles of, I'm gonna say it was the 80s. I would imagine, considering the ages of Nate and Sam, that stuff was probably around the 80s. They were probably born in the 70s, late 70s or whatnot, maybe. And then going in to the 80s with the orphanage scene. So here again, this is a later chapter where we had to go into the mansion to get their mother's things. But you can see they've included it in the beginning of the book with all the younger years. Hector Alcazar, which we thought was going to play a larger role in the game. Surprisingly, he was part of a pretty big twist. But again, you know, they spare no expense in terms of conceptualization. The Panamanian prison scene, also at the beginning of the game. You can see different types of clothing for what Nate might have been wearing, or the prisoners in general. Some of the other prisoners up here. This, I believe, is a conceptualization for Rafe, I think. But it looks like an actor. I can't remember his name. He was in Saving Private Ryan. Younger guy at the time. He's been in quite a few other films, I think, too. But I just don't remember his name. Looks like him in that one. If that's supposed to be Rafe. I think it is. Maybe it says... No, it just really gives credit for the artists. We've got Vargas up top here. Still waiting for that Vargas DLC. No, not really. Got Nate in the prison here, but in his adventuring outfit from later in the game. I don't know if this was for something that was supposed to happen later, or potentially later, or if it's just their way of creating scale. Not so sure. Doesn't look like anything we really dealt with in the game, though. Some more pieces here. Looks like we've got Nate in more of his like normal life attire from the earlier chapters in the game as well. Render. And then his meeting with Sam, different times of day. It's always interesting to see an artist's representation of what Nate looks like, because in some cases it's different. Here's one example of that. Like, this is Nate's diving suit from the Malaysia job chapter, and obviously that doesn't really look too much like Nate, but it's what he wears. So on the left, this is kind of interesting. You can see that they did, looks like a tanker truck there, but then here it looks like it's part of a train. Although we were dealing with a cargo truck. I mean, there might be some things here. Though it was eventually decided that the wreck would be a shipping container. In these early concepts, it was a gas tanker truck. So yeah, tells you a little bit about what they were thinking. Interesting as well. If you beat the game, you get a lot of concept art in the bonus section, and I know there's some bigger shots of this too that you can look at. Jameson, Nate's boss, which again renders on the left and some concepts on the right. You can see the attention to detail that they went to here, just with every single character, even people that played you know, minor roles or supporting characters. Scene from the dive, the Malaysia job chapter again. That was actually really cool. A lot of attention to detail in that area. And as I had said when I was playing, it could almost be a game in itself. Here, this looks like... I was going to see if that was maybe when it was a tanker. I don't know. Elena, some casual clothing, some different ideas for what they had for her. Next to a render. I don't know what this is. Variations on Brickstone, a generic 1990s game character created for the game Cassie plays. Well, she only played Crash Bandicoot, though, so I don't know. This is from the normal life. Some storyboarding. This is probably getting an idea for the animators how they're going to do things. Or for the actors, you know, doing motion capture, I guess. Here we move forward to the Italy chapter, where they're going in to steal the St. Dismas cross from Rafe, or the auction in general, which Rafe is trying to buy. This was a great chapter because it felt a lot like a Mission Impossible movie. It really did, with them getting dressed up and kind of getting in there and causing trouble. We're also introduced to Sully, which I don't know if they showed. Yeah, I think we'll see a part later on where we kind of see his introduction concept. But all the detail that goes into the outfits and considering what they might be wearing. Renders from different lighting positions. The mansion itself here. Or the villa. Good old Nadine. Different hairstyles for her. Her meeting with Sullivan. The auction in general. I mean, just all these like, you know, did they necessarily have to paint this or get somebody to paint this? I mean, it helps visualize. It helps the 3D guys and other artists that are making the in-game assets create this stuff. More outfits, designs for Rafe, Sam. Nadine here, it looks like they have her in fatigues in this one. Different, like, dresses, perhaps. Yeah, here's one in fatigues. These look like a render. I don't know what's up with the hair color here. It must be something for testing. I don't know. Maybe there's just unfinished assets, character placement. I don't know, to get the scene set up. Non-player characters, just, you know, random people that were in the auction. You know, the attention to detail that goes into making all those individual characters is always interesting as well. This, I think, was our intro to Sully, which was a good one. This is later when they actually have the cross, it looks like. Perhaps a concept for the original auctioneer, somebody displaying the relics. Different looks for maybe how Nate will be climbing. And I mean, all the work that goes into this production, even just from the 2D concept art, it blows me away. I mean, this is what game development is about. The waiters and waitresses, various other figures that we never really meet. They're just, you know, kind of hanging around. This was the eventual auctioneer, I think. Different things that she might have been wearing. Again, more just random people that I'm sure if we spent more time walking around, we'd probably see some of these guys and gals. And a lot of people, they just rush through games, you know, just to get to the end, to get their achievement or whatever. And they miss all this. It makes me feel kind of bad for the artists because they spent so much time, you know, creating these assets, you know, for us to have an immersive experience, and we kind of neglect it. So we got to pay attention to everything. But here we move on to Scotland attire for Nate. Which was nice that they had him change outfits depending on where he was a little bit more. For the most part, I found like in the original titles, generally wore a lot of the same stuff. Might have changed a few times in some of the later games, but for the most part, you saw him in the same clothing for greater durations in the old ones. Whereas this time we had some things change up a bit, which made sense because, you know, they go to Scotland and it's cold and everything, so he had to wear a different outfit. He had to put on a jacket. But different ideas of what he could have been wearing. Interesting. A lot of these would have worked out too. Some of these are actually pretty cool with the leather jacket, the flight jacket. Or the bomber jacket. Nadine and her winter attire. I really love these pieces here, and we'll see more of these. The ones that kind of give you a sense of scale with a character in the foreground. I would love to have like blown up version of these so I can frame. I have a larger piece in the jungle that we might see later on that I've managed to find online for a wallpaper. Some black and whites here. Got Sam and his attire renders there. Interesting enough, we have an Elena render here. I'm not sure when this was supposed to be for because it's included in this chapter. Oh, this might have been... I don't know, there's one scene where she's at home. That I forget what part that was. I don't know. Sully when he's got his bomber jacket. And then Rafe in his winter attire there. See these pieces here on the left I really love. They're just kind of getting a sense of scale for the different environments. I think that's always the purpose of putting at least one character in there to kind of give the 3D people and the map makers an idea of what they're going for. We've got shoreline troops here, different types of body armor and equipment they could have been wearing. That's interesting. We've got like one of the slides. Maybe trying to give the rest of the team an idea of what it would look like. More shoreline. These heavy guys, I hated them. I really hated them. Once you figure out how to take them out, they're not too bad, but the problem is a lot of times they had shotguns, and the shotgun in at least normal mode would take you out in like 2 or 3 hits. So you had to be very careful. I would say maybe 3 hits, but I'm not sure. Started to figure them out a little bit more later on, but more shoreline. Their RPG guy. A variety of other ones that we had to deal with. Although, admittedly, I don't think we ever really got to see a lot of these concepts for shoreline. There were a variety of troops that we dealt with, but some of these I don't recognize. More of the supposed Avery gravesite. Again, I really love these pieces. We've got maybe some conceptualization for the puzzle that we dealt with here on the left. Again, throwing in a character for scaling. I imagine there's much more that goes into this, especially with the puzzle, like trying to figure out how the puzzle's actually going to work. I imagine there's a lot more concept art that we're not seeing that kind of gives other artists and programmers an idea of how to make these things work. Here we have Nate on the right. This looked like an alternate costume for him or clothing set. Similar to the one we end up with towards the end of the game, mid to end part of the game. but they changed his shirt to blue, and he has different pants, I think, as well. He's also got like an undershirt in this one. Definitely gotta like the blue. Blue's a good color. We have Elena on the left. This looks like from the scene where she showed up at the end of the Madagascar chapter after the chase, where she discovers that Nate's been lying. But you can see the emotion in her face with these renders. And that was the thing that hit me the most, I think, because they were using this new technique to capture the actors' facial features. And it went to show you that it was more than just voice acting. It was you know, them literally acting, you know, on a green screen and using not only body motion capture but facial recognition and whatnot, or facial capture to create emotion within these characters. You could see it. I mean, just even in the eyes when Elena would look at Nate and things like that. It was great. Entering Madagascar here. Page full of Sullivan, one of my favorite characters, actually. I'm hoping that if we see some DLC for Uncharted 4, that it might be Sam and Sullivan, considering what we were presented with towards the end. But different outfits that he could have been wearing. I think ultimately we ended up with this, which is fitting considering Sullivan, his age and sense of style. But these would have worked too, I think. A lot of these on the left. I love this piece, see here, again with Nate in the foreground to kind of give you a sense of scale. I would frame this if I had a bigger version of that. The Roadhog Safari. This was really fun. Just driving out and seeing the mountain ranges and whatnot. Vehicle physics were really, really good. Important part of the game. And they didn't overdo things. Like, they introduce you to a vehicle, but they don't overdo it. Like, they don't try to keep you in the vehicle for too long. You know, they throw it in here and there. They bring it back later. You know, they introduce you to the grappling hook and whatnot, but they don't overdo things like that. Like, they don't make it a gimmick or anything, which was nice. They spread everything out, just kind of like they did with their locations. Like, you got to see a variety of locations. You spent more time in others than in some than others, but really it just helped with the story to kind of keep you moving around. And here we've got some nice pieces of the environments that we tend to see. Some of the broken down towers. Again, this piece, I'd totally frame something like that. Nate, Sam, and Sully going up to the ruins there. It's kind of fun reliving the game through concept art. I can remember playing everything, and now here we're presented with the the bell tower, and look at the intricate detail presented here, and Nate there for scale. I'm surprised I didn't muck that chapter up somehow, climbing around there. You play through some of the Uncharted games, you start to figure out where they're going to have you go. You start to see things that the level designers have put in order to kind of lead you through. There's a couple of places where I did get stuck, but for the most part it was smooth sailing. I would say that in the older games I probably got lost a lot more than I did in this game. I think they did a good job of kind of leading you towards where you're supposed to go. Different ideas for the tower maybe here. Or a tower, which I think is this one here. Interior. The floor, I think. Parts of the ship rendered here. Look at the attention to detail just in this wall asset. Unbelievable. More parts of Madagascar, kind of giving ideas of the view. I think this is the one we saw in the beginning. The busy streets. This is even the hotel. I mean, to think that they've drawn that hotel scene, which only has like what, a minute of viewership or something like that, if even a minute. They've drawn everything. And again, I would imagine that there's a lot that's not in this book. There's probably tons of things. Is that there for scale? Maybe, I don't know. And there's obviously a few things here that I could be reading, but for the sake of getting through the book, I'm not going to. Little bits of the chase, but not everything presented here. Looks like there might have been a jump at one point. I don't know. More shoreline. Madagascar shoreline. So if you think about it, every chapter, if it was in a different location, had to have individuals in different outfits. You know, so you had to go from winter clothing to maybe summer clothing and whatnot. So you had to change the main characters. You had to change the bad guys. It's a lot of work. Here's some storyboarding. Nate freaking out on top of that thing. And the amount of storyboards that we're probably not seeing, I would imagine. I have a Star Wars book of the original trilogy that has almost every storyboard. And it's a really thick book, and it goes to show you how much time and effort actually goes into storyboarding alone. But that's how you start. That's how you kind of get an idea of the pacing and the direction that your game or movie is going to take. It really helps the artist visualize what they're creating. And here too, even just for these things, I mean... I'm getting scolded here by Elena. But funny, again, to kind of see the different artists' take on the characters' looks. Here is similar to that dive suit that we saw, the same artist here, but again, kind of a guy that doesn't really look like Nate, but it's obviously the outfit that he ended up wearing throughout the rest of the game. And I thought it was a good choice. This is actually, if you bought the collector's edition for Uncharted 4, which I did, it came with an awesome statue, and this is actually it right here. That's the exact same pose in the base that it comes with, but this is more of like a conceptualization or render for it. I don't think it's an actual photo of it, but it looks nearly identical to that. It's really nice, actually. It's a lot larger than I thought it would be. I'm a sucker for collectibles. Sam in his final wardrobe. This is the marooned chapter. Nate has perfect hair all the time. These island areas were beautiful once we got to this chapter on the boat for the first time. The blue clear water was amazing. I don't think we ever saw any ruins like this. Also interesting to think about the things that they were perhaps going to create but didn't. A lot of things were pulled out of the game. Characters even. A lot of people wanted to see Chloe or Cutter. They talked about how the game was already saturated with characters and they thought it would be too much to try to squeeze them in. Although they do have some multiplayer models for those characters that we can see later, I think. Again, more environments and scaling. This piece here, I actually have this as a desktop wallpaper that I managed to find. Pretty high resolution version of it. I loved seeing that mountain. That was always a great piece of being in those chapters. Nadine, jungle attire, different hairstyles again. Here's Nate. Looks like maybe with the earlier clothing ideas they had about him in white. Oh, this says Madagascar. Rafe, different clothing there. Elena showing up. Back to the maroon scene. Various concept here for areas in the jungle. Nate finding Sam. Elena finding Nate. These heavy son of a guns. Different weapons that they had. The shotgun ones, I would say, were worse than the assault rifle ones, because the shotgun, if they got too close to you, would, like I said, take you out in a couple of hits. Plus, if they started to melee you, you were pretty much screwed unless their helmet was gone, which you'd have to like come up behind them, and got messy. Then these were the even heavier guys, or versions of them that they were considering. Potential snipers here. Kablam. More shore. I mean, look at the amount of effort that went into drawing the shoreline characters, you know? And a lot of these we don't even see. For example, I don't think we ever saw like a female shoreline soldier. Nadine was the only one, and she was in charge of everything. She had inherited the mess from her father, as they had said. Some more potential like marksmen or snipers, maybe. I don't know if maybe these are from multiplayer. No, because I don't. We'll see multiplayer like at the end of the book, I think. Doesn't really say anything. That almost looks real. Looks like here we have scaling for foliage. How they line up the ruins here. The thing that got me about this one was the cinematography and the compositions that they managed to create throughout the game. You'd come up over a hill and they would just have this perfect shot set up that would look like a beautiful image a photographer would take. And then you would just start moving around, and somehow the level was designed in a way that you would always be presented with a magnificent view, which, I mean, you can kind of get ideas of it in this art, kind of seeing how like again, you can imagine coming up and just being presented with that view. But a lot of games, you know, all the good stuff's hidden and you really have to try to find it. But in Uncharted, you know, it's just pretty much a look up, you know. Spend some time looking around and you'll see something amazing. But here we had more ruins of Libertalia. The Forge, although it looked different in what we played. This is the where the treasury scene here. Different ruins, perhaps mansions for the founders. More detailed looks at shoreline. Yeah, Libertalia was great. Although not as... I mean, if you think about the original Uncharted, a lot of the ruins or ancient cities that we would visit in those games were probably more grand or more kind of fantasy, high fantasy in a way. Whereas this one, it was more grounded. So you weren't necessarily presented with a setting that was as spectacular as some of the old games, but I think they were going for a little bit more realism in an Uncharted game. Well, as realistic as you can get. Obviously, it wasn't, you know, a Tom Clancy title or anything that was supposed to present you with, you know, one bullet kills or anything. But what I mean is more kind of things that we would see in reality. Like, we could expect to find something that looked like Libertalia in reality, whereas in the earlier Uncharted's, a lot of the cities and things that we found were a bit more on the side of magnificent. I didn't have a problem with it, just because the way they presented it in this game was pretty great. That level of believability that, I mean, we could see here. You can imagine running into some of this. Not that you couldn't with some of the other things. It just depends on your imagination, I guess. But we never got to... I wonder if this was an idea that they had. Go with a riverboat. I bet you they had tons of ideas for things that they wanted to do, but, you know, you run out of time. More things leading up to the founders' homes. There's the founders themselves, which I think are... These are probably rough drafts of the highly detailed paintings that were presented with later. Here's the... this was... Two's mansion, where they brought everybody together to kill them off. Here's some of the detailed paintings that we saw later on in the game. There's Avery himself. Interesting to see different conceptualizations for him. All the paintings of the founders. Again, another boat scene, which I don't think we were ever presented with. I wonder if they had something planned out for that. A little bit more underwater detail here. With a diver for scale. Again, sometimes a lot of this just might be for scale. Like that boat, maybe it's just for scale and not necessarily an idea that they had. I suppose we could, of course, be, like I said, reading about some of this, but... Just make sure I didn't skip a page. Here, just some more of the interiors. A lot of this stuff is when we were with Elena. She's not pictured here, though, in these conceptualizations. Just to think that there's something drawn up for, like, every little angle. It's incredible. Some more of the founders. Nate hiding from a sniper, I guess. Oh, the caves. Those freaking mummies. Those exploding mummies were terrible. I did okay up until more of the end, but... A little bit more detailed, like, bone arrangements here. Some things that we didn't... Like, I don't remember seeing that. I don't know if they had that anywhere. Some of the ships here. Oh, that would have been cool to kind of like go through the middle of sunken ships and whatnot. That kind of would have been a neat scene. I wonder what the deadline was on this game. I would imagine most games like this, you're usually talking about 4 years of development, something like that, if not more. I wonder what their actual deadline was. I wonder if anything got rushed. I wonder. I mean, there might have been a few moments towards the end where you feel like maybe something was a little rushed, but admittedly, I don't think I really could call out anything that annoyed me. Again, the Wraith fight I feel perhaps could have been a bit different, but I don't know if we ever got anything that looked like this. Like you almost think, you know, how much of this was an idea for something they were gonna do, how much of it was something that just got scrapped. I mean, are we even seeing any of the things that got scrapped? You know, like what things aren't we seeing? Detailed architecture here. Views. I wonder if this is, explores the idea that the secret cove is invisible to those sailing around it. The inlet shows the path into the colonies from the outside. It would have been inconspicuous. Interesting. And the amount of time, I mean, these types of paintings, hours. I mean, hours of work. I mean, I'm not a talented artist, so I don't know for sure. But, you know, from watching like people do, you know, paintings in videos and things, and you asking art, well, how long did it take you to make that? Oh, a few hours or whatever, a day, something. I don't know, more than that. It just, a lot of work goes into things that, you know, maybe weren't even in the game. But hey, they're getting paid, right? It's their job. Not a bad job to have. Stuff that you can add to your portfolio. I'd be proud to have said that I drew something for Uncharted. Getting more ideas of views that we could have perhaps seen. All makes you want to travel. The game made me want to travel more. This book makes me want to travel more. Although I won't get to see fancy things like this, but in terms of terrain, yes. It's not crazy looking pirate ships beached or whatever. Anytime there's a pirate ship in a cave, I mean, you're always going to think about the Goonies. I mean, that's the first time I saw it. It was like Goonies. Yep. I think that's the inspiration. It's interesting that they made just designs of the ship in its glory days, I guess. I guess if you're going to wreck a ship, you need to know what it looked like originally. More ideas for what he would have found in the cave. I almost feel like there could have been more to do on the ship than what we had, which maybe that part felt a touch rushed. I heard that there was also supposed to be a sword fighting scene, or like a part in the mansion where you kind of play fight with Sam with a sword, so you can learn how to sword fight for the later scene in the game when you fight Rafe or something like that. But it would have been interesting, because here you see a sword fight against, I don't know, like a shoreline guy or something. Admittedly, it probably would have been good to have some sort of, uh-oh, I lost my weapons and here's these swords, and you get like a practice fight, and then later on you end up fighting Rafe maybe with a sword. But here you can see we're just nearing the end of the game. Funny enough, though, we're not presented with any concept art for the actual fight with Rafe. I mean, we have that, but that's not Rafe. It's some other dude. Nathan's lost his firearm. An explosion causes the mass. I almost wonder if that sword fight was kind of implemented late or something, or if they changed something with the ending. Because the way it was, that was the only thing to me that was a bit questionable. Still, it was intense, but here's later on a epilogue. Older Elena, Cassie, different ideas for what Cassie might have looked like or what she might have been wearing. Them in their beach house. Different versions of Cassie again, her finding all of Nate's things. More that kind of like Pixar-esque art. Her playing video games. This was a touching moment. This was something that I'm glad that they did, you know, to kind of see how everything panned out with them. A rough of that famous photo. Most satisfying ending in gaming history, I think. Marketing art here. Looks like different ideas for covers and whatnot, I guess. Some of this stuff we've seen, obviously the cover of the game and whatnot there. More marketing art ideas for what they might have on posters or ads and things like that. Multiplayer content, which I played for a few hours. It's okay. It's not bad. It got some interesting ideas, but it's not my favorite thing about the game. I definitely don't buy Uncharted games for multiplayer, especially considering how bad I am with an analog stick for aiming a gun. It's not my thing. But some different assets for that. Here are some other characters that are from other games. Chloe, Charlie Cutter, some of the old villains as well that you can play. You can unlock these player models through completing like multiplayer achievements and things like that and getting points. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that looks like it. I think we're done here. There's the back. Nothing crazy. The Art of Uncharted 4: Thief's End. Fantastic book. I think I got mine for about $26 on Amazon.com. Again, there is like a special edition $70 one that has a different cover, a lithograph, and it comes like in a different box. I didn't know about it at the time, but admittedly, the price is a bit up there for what it is. I think all the art's exactly the same. Fantastic book. Nice addition to my collection of art books. I think there's also a Uncharted art book that focuses on the original trilogy on PlayStation 3 that has all 3 games in one book. I might pick that one up as well. Although I almost imagine they'll make like a book that has all 4, but that would be pretty hefty. So I might just pick up the other one. If I do, I might look through that one as well. Take another trip down memory lane. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Art of Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. A fantastic game and a fantastic book to go along with it. I would highly recommend picking one up if you think you enjoy this kind of thing. But I do have a lot more art books in my collection, and I'm sure there will be more games in the future that will provide us with fantastic concept art. So if you'd like to see me cover a few more of those, then go ahead and let me know, and we'll see what we can do. But with that, thank you so much for joining me, and I'll definitely see you on the next one.